Ready? Good afternoon, Dr. Gus Penix, President of the Nicholas County Board of Education. I'd like to call this special meeting of the board to order at this time. Would you please rise and join the board in a moment of silent reflection? It's this opportunity to reflect on those things for which we're able to be thankful, but also to clear our hearts and minds for the business we're going to talk about here today. So, a moment of silent reflection, please. Thank you. Would you please join the board in saluting our country with the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May be seated. Our second item on the agenda today, our third item, is the discussion items for the American Rescue Plan budget. I think the superintendent and others of her staff are going to present at this time.
Yes. Well, I'm happy to say that this is pertaining to our third round of money. So the CARES Act money we've received to support our students for in lost learning and a variety of things just to help our school system with all the losses that we've had with COVID. And so the third round of money is called the American Rescue Plan, and it's for elementary, secondary schools emergency relief plan. So we were required to put together a budget, a proposed budget, for how to spend the monies. And we, of course, our internal planning team consisted of myself, the Director of Finance, Kevin Hess, the Director of Federal Programs, Dr. Lee, Director of Special Education, Lydia Young, the Director of Student Services, Tammy Gregory, the Director of Maintenance and Transportation, Rocky Roberts, the Director of Technology, Chris Hanshaw, the Director of Personnel, Melissa Adkins, and, of course, the Nicholas County Board President. And an external consultant was school principals, CEFP committee members, and SESC CTE liaison, and ZMM construction. One of the areas that we will be focusing on, and I'm just going to be highlighting the areas, and Dr. Lee and Tracy Chenoweth will go into depth about each of the areas for you, and they will be able to answer any of the questions that you may have. So, academic performance, a need for a continued focus on solid core reading instruction at all levels. School attendance. Students experience erratic attendance patterns during the 2021 school year. Course failure rates. Secondary schools report a high course failure rate. Social work records. Records represent social workers' yearly contracts. And custodial quarantine data. As you know, this board has hired custodians to do additional work to keep our schools clean and safe for our students. So this time I'll hand it over to Sarah Lee.
Okay, you won't find it surprising that anytime federal money is involved, the first thing that the department always asks you for is a needs assessment. So as we get into the needs assessment, the first thing that we always look at is data. And those of you that know me know that's, of course, my thing to look at. I've enjoyed every moment of it. Sometimes it's been a little painful, but we dug in. So the first type of data that we looked at was we wanted to see where we were academically, or where we thought we were going to be. So the first piece of data that we looked at was PALS. And PALS is our assessment that we use as a screener for our early elementary kids. Basically, it's screening for reading skills. But what we found was a little alarming. When you look at our chart, of this past spring, we were able to assess 132 kids, which is actually a very low number for us because we had several people who did not send their kids to pre-K this year, so we already know that we have more kids coming into kindergarten that haven't had a pre-K experience. But out of those 132, 53% of them did what PALS refers to as IDing, which means they're identified for having a deficiency that's likely to cause a reading issue. So those are kind of like our kids that we really want to zoom in and target. Okay? And you can see I made some notes over here on the right-hand side, but basically our breakdowns show there was a range of variance from 36% to 100% when you broke it down at the classroom level. I will say that the 100% classroom had a substitute, and it was a very low number of kids that were assessed. So that's not totally as scary as what I thought. But when we look at kindergarten, we assessed 239 of our kiddos, and we had about 25% of them identify. One piece that was concerning to me when I broke it down for the kindergarten level, and I got to looking, some of our outlying schools had a little higher percent. Now, whether that's because of the broadband and the lack of broadband, and maybe those kids aren't as involved when they had their distance learning days, we don't know, but that's something we need to look at.
Dr. Lee, just a second. When you identify outlying, are you talking about outside of, like, say, Summersville?
Yes, our most rural schools.
Rural schools, okay. Thank you.
And our first graders, similarly, we assessed 180 of them, and we were running at about 50% of them identifying for having issues, but there wasn't a whole lot of variance in the range. When you looked at it at the classroom level, it was basically between 36 and 66% where the classes all fell. So this was a little alarming to me. This was a piece of data that I shared with Dr. Tiedrich, and I said, I really think we need to look at, when we get additional funding, how we can address this, because if we don't nip this in the bud, so to speak, we're going to have a group of kids for 13 years that we're going to have to constantly have a lot of supports and interventions for. So my proposal for this was that we consider employing some additional early elementary aides that could be used as instructional aides to alleviate some class sizes, give some extra hands where teachers can really have some time to do some small group direct instruction and really make sure that these kids can read. Also, it would help with behavior control because, as I mentioned, we were going to have several people coming into kindergarten and or first grade that have had very minimal school experiences. So not only do they need to learn to read, they need to learn social interaction and appropriate behavior.
Dr. Lee, one other thing. When these percentages that we're looking at here, as you said earlier, I think it mainly, when they're identified, the deficiency is generally reading. Does it look at any other areas?
No, this one is reading and language.
Okay, thank you.
And this is the number of kids that we had assessed this spring. There may be some that were distance learning that the teachers weren't able to get to. A lot of them, they either assessed them online or they brought them in on a Wednesday and tried to assess them, but there are a few kids, of course, that are unaccounted for just because of the distance learning situation we were in. Okay, the next set of reading assessment that we looked at is the level set assessment, which I've talked with you before about. It is the screening tool that we use for grades 6 through 12, and it's designed to give us an approximate reading level and forecast whether those kiddos are going to be college and career ready with their literacy level when they graduate. It's a little grim looking, but you'll see the percentage of kids that actually were able to test in May is very low. But if you remember back to May, we had lots of classrooms on quarantine, lots of kids that weren't here. We also flashed back and looked at our last balanced scorecards, which you guys have seen in the years past, but we wanted to remember to take a peek at that. If you remember, one of our areas of concern was down here with this post-secondary achievement. When we received that report card, oops, that was an area of concern. That's the number of our kiddos that are ready. They've either been a CTE completer or they've completed courses like AP, dual credit, those types of things. So we knew that was an area of concern. We also looked back at our scorecards by the programmatic level. That's our county one. This was our scorecard for elementary, but this is from 2019. This is pre-COVID where we were, so this is nothing new. One of the requirements from the state when we give our presentation is they want to make sure that we are aware of our subgroups, and if we have a particular subgroup that needs addressed better than others. But our subgroups at this point are fairly close to each other. You'll see ones that are red are getting close to the end of the bar, and then several of our yellow ones are at the beginning of yellow.
Do those bars represent percentages?
The way they did that scorecard, it's almost like you have those categories, which you see up here, does not meet standard, partially meets standard, meets, and exceeds. And they shade the bar based on that percentage, so you have a quick visual, and you would know we're almost out of the does not meet standards, which I think is about 25%, if I'm remembering correctly. And we're almost to the yellow. So when you start into the yellow, which is partially meets standards, then the bar grows, if that makes sense. You can almost think of those as quartiles.
No, I'm behind, so.
You're behind, but that's okay. This was out 2 years ago before you started, so ask away.
What's CCR?
College and career ready.
So our concerns are definitely the reds.
Yes.
And we can't let yellow get out of there because that just says partial.
Partial, right.
So we really, the blue and the green are great, are getting better. The blue and green is great, but red and yellow are we need to be concerned about.
Those are the areas that we want to keep on our radar map. And like I said, this was from 2019, so this is what we put into our strategic plan for 19 and 20.
Right.
So those are the pieces of where those goals have come from. And then, of course, the subgroups for the middle schools, they're comparable to each other, but it's not good for anybody because you'll see they're all red. The good thing is, though, they're all close to completing that bar and moving into the yellow. So hopefully when we get back to regular assessments, we'll be ready to move. Okay, and then they also ask us to look at your subgroups for high school. And of course, with high school, it's not pretty. The only success area in high school is the graduation rate and the on track to graduate. So as you guys already know, and we've looked at it with our strategic plan is, are we making sure that our kids leave with adequate skills to become college and career ready? And just like we've been doing for the last 2 years, we're really looking at how we're doing dual credit, AP, and the career tech ed. So we still have data to continue what we've been working on. The next piece of data that our committee looked at was this year's assessment data, which is still embargoed. So you can see I put a little box over it because we can't broadcast it. But it does indicate we still clearly have some work to do, especially in those middle school grades, and especially with math. Okay, looking at the SAT, we looked at that information. Once again, these are my calculations. The official ones from the state have not come out, but I sat down and counted up by looking at student scores, and I have an estimated percent proficiency listed. Of course, you'll see that we're twice as good in ELA as we are in math.
Okay, the SAT, these assessments for the SAT, that is what? When is that given, and what is it given?
The SAT is given to the 11th grade students. It's your indicator that's measuring growth for 9th, 10th, and 11th grade.
It's pretty serious.
It's pretty serious stuff. Okay, the other piece that we looked at was attendance. And this is the piece that brings cold chills, puts the hair on the back of my neck standing up, because this is what worries me the most. Our kiddos had elected to come to school face-to-face this year. In theory, when you stop and think about it, they would have had a full semester, second semester, which is about 90 days. And because we did the A-day, B-day alternating schedule in the fall, the most that they would have probably had would have been 40 days. So you're probably looking at, if they were at school every day, 135 days during the school year. Wow. Well, then when we start looking at what was happening because of COVID is when I really get a little nervous, because within that 135 days, students lost 5 days for professional learning. We had 33 days that had to be called remote due to the level of COVID infection. We had 4 weather-related remote days. We had 1 day with no students for staff vaccines. We had 4 non-traditional instruction days, and then we had 3 days where we either had a delay or an early dismissal due to weather. That's a lot of missed instructional time, a lot.
You say that's out of the 135?
Yes.
You mean,
We-
subtract these off from 135?
Yeah. In theory, and that's, that's if those kids didn't get quarantined or anything like that, which is a whole nother piece we're going to get into. There's been a lot of missed instructional time this year.
So this doesn't include kids that were at home?
Right, this does not include the 5-day distance kids. These are just the kids that elected to come, whatnot. Now, these would also impact some of those kids. If, for instance, those kids, they had lessons for all 5 days, but they met with that teacher on that Wednesday. Most of those times, they still were able to meet, but it could have been a case of that day didn't happen.
Well, I assume that group will have to be evaluated in some way.
They have been. We've looked at some of their data, and you'll see a piece of that in a minute, and it'll probably surprise you. But we also looked at employee attendance. Because we thought about those kids, that were there that 135 days, but considering employees was the next piece. In the fall, employees that had COVID were able to claim COVID leave, and there were 169 days of COVID leave claimed for adult absences. If we looked at professionals, we had 6,084 days called for substitutes this year. We have 2,042 days for substitutes for service positions. So even when kids were there, they may not have had that high-quality certified routine teacher in front of them. So that's another thing that we have to try to keep on the radar map when we were making decisions.
Do you know what the average is for substitutes on a yearly basis?
I don't know how this compares to other years.
We have been improving our substitutes. Each year we had improved on fewer and fewer subs being called. So from the time I started, it started lessening over the years. So this is just a really
I'm sure it's not that high.
unbelievable number.
And I'm sure that it is high for this year because we had an awful lot of employees who were impacted by COVID. And I would like to point out that the 169 days of COVID leave doesn't even really give you the full picture because COVID leave expired on December 31st. So anybody who had COVID after December 31st, like me, for instance, I had it in January and February, I couldn't claim COVID leave for that. I had to use my sick leave.
Right. So situations like that would have showed up here if it were a
Yes.
teacher.
It's an unbelievable
Unbelievable amount.
unbelievable amount.
Well, right now, we go down to 12 years old can be vaccinated. What are we going to do? Are we going to go ahead the way we always do in children younger than 12, requiring masks and that sort of thing?
No, I'm not requiring masks. The governor dropped the mask orders, so for summer school, I'm not requiring masks for students or for staff. And I just came back from a superintendent's conference, and the superintendents I spoke to, all but one, they're following exactly what the governor ordered.
Well, the governor's not always very smart on that stuff, I'm afraid. Don't publish that.
Too late.
With the Delta variant, that worries me. That
Scary.
worries me a lot, for children under 12.
One of the other components that they're asking us, oh, wait a minute. I got ahead of myself there. That's why I skip on. The other piece that we looked at with academics was grade distribution. And Mr. Berry, I think this is what you were alluding to earlier, was how are they doing? This top row you will see, this is for our secondary schools because their grades automatically feed into Weavis, which means when we go data mining in Zoom, we can pull that. Elementary is different. So this is just for our secondary schools. But I could go in and filter the grade distribution on who received D's and F's. And the first box is ELA, and it's at 18.64. Math, 21.86. Science, 22.28. And social studies, 17.24. So that's alarming to me in the fact that we're going to have kids that need a lot of tutoring and possible credit recovery to make up some of those grades. Now this is county-wide, all of our secondaries. Okay? But that made me wonder, and I had to dig a little more deeply. I said, well, just like him, what about the kids who chose to stay distant for 5 days? How do their scores play into this? So I sat and we cohorted all the kids that were registered in Weavis as a 5-day distance learning student, and we pulled the data just for that cohort of kids. Now this is county-wide. Their ELA Ds and Fs were only 10.67%, math 11.99, science Ds and Fs 7.97, and social studies Ds and Fs 5.14. So surprisingly, yes,
In their studies.
they were more consistent in their studies than the all group. Now you have to remember, their scores would be averaged in here because this is countywide, this is everybody. It doesn't exclude them, but when you pull them out and look at them separately, they do look much better.
So really, the countywide would have been higher if they hadn't been in
Yes.
that group.
Yes. So we have a lot of need at the secondary level between looking at the grade distribution and the achievement, and we know what the reading scores are. It's kind of scary.
But you look at those kids that were taught at home, they were getting like one-on-one instruction because the parent was, and with what they were getting, I mean,
And there's possibility that they
Some.
may have had additional assistance.
well, that's
Yes.
true too.
Yes, yes. Some, you don't know. You just don't know.
Maybe.
How many students altogether did we have on all year on 5-day at home?
Oh, I'd have to look on my computer. I put all those in the cohort, but I didn't
I
count
don't
them.
remember.
It was more than what I expected.
More than 500?
I think second semester is when we got it down lower. We had
I don't know that it
failing
was that
students
high.
to come back.
It was higher than what I expected.
Yeah, I know it's not something we do, but what John mentioned there, if you pulled those kids out separate and tested them, who would come out on top, you know?
I don't know. It'll be an interesting study. The other piece that the state requires that we look at with our data is social emotional needs. What's happening in our county, which we already know. We have had a lot of need for counselors this year just by the fact that we lost 4 staff members and 3 students. I mean, that's a huge piece in itself. But what we thought we would pull for data to share with the state is we pulled one of our counselors' logs, and we pulled this one because she has an example of what her duties are at the elementary as well as the secondary level. And all this graph really is doing is breaking down her contacts of where she is providing services. And I'll read some of these list of services of what these represent, but anything that was a home visit, working with the HHR for a family, community service referrals, helping families with iPad issues, phone contacts, helping with their Christmas arrangements, helping families make sure that they have utilities and the resources they need for their children, delivering food, meeting with students, providing hygiene services, providing parent education, participating in IEP meetings with parents, working with school PBS teams, working with the family engagement cohort with 3 schools, working with CPS. So it's a variety of the typical, what you would consider a social work task.
These aren't color-coded, but I'm assuming they're in the same order as the bottom, GRE, RHS, and CHS?
Yes.
Okay.
And you can see the need, of course, is way greater at the elementary level, which is to be expected.
And when you say counseling, you are referring also to the social workers in school?
Yes.
Okay.
So when I was saying one-on-one, I meant they were getting one-on-one because most of the parents that I talked to, they were one-on-one with their kids. They were helping their kids, so they were actually getting one-on-one.
Yeah. Some do.
Which, yeah, not all of them, but
One of the advantages we had is that before the pandemic, this board saw fit to employ the social workers and the additional counselors. And thank God we did, because they were already in the routine of going out, providing the assistance. So it wasn't like a new thing that we just hired a bunch of new people and threw them in there and said, go help. So I think because of that, because we were fortunate enough to be ahead of the game, our kids have fared way better, I think, than a lot of kids have in the state, because we have wonderful, wonderful counselors and social workers.
Okay, the other area for our needs assessment we looked at was maintenance, and I see Rocky back there. So Rocky, jump in anytime you want here.
Just one before that, Dr. Lee. So we're looking at additional instructional help, particularly at the secondary level in a couple of these areas as a part of this program.
And as a part of this, we put a little bit of funding in for maintaining our social work program, because I think that graph shows the fact that we need it, and then maintaining, especially at that elementary level.
Okay. Anything we can do for the secondary level with particular concerns about those SATs and those?
Yeah, Tracy's going to address that here in just a minute.
Good. Okay.
But with maintenance, there's a variety of projects after working with Rocky, and I guess he and Donna have been working with the CEFP team to figure out what it is that we really need. But some of the pieces that we've looked at was the fact that school was closed for 33 days due to COVID, even though we have hired those additional custodians. He's providing those cleaning supplies, but we're still having some issues with transmission. 1/4 of our buses resulted in having quarantined students, so 12 of the 48. That's a pretty high percentage, so we need to look at how we can have some mitigation there. Approximately 1/3 of grade school classrooms were quarantined at some point throughout the year. And we have about half of the middle school classrooms that were quarantined, at least in some point of the year. And then that last bullet we have, most elementary schools have like a multi-purpose room. So it may be a case of that's used for the gym / cafeteria / where they put the kids for dismissal. And having that one meeting space that they have not being able to be utilized this year caused some issues for a lot of schools. For example, at one school, the gym became the cafeteria for social distancing purposes, which meant those kids lost phys ed. They had to go to the classrooms or outside and do some different things. Another one of our elementary schools, in order to get the social distancing in their classroom, had to move one of their grade level classrooms into their multi-purpose room, which once again meant phys ed had to go to the classroom or go outside. So because of that issue, Rocky is recommending that we look at building like, I don't know if you want to think of it as an outdoor meeting space or outdoor classroom, but basically where there would be a shelter so that those schools have an additional space so that despite the weather or whatnot, they can go out there. We could also use that in case of meeting with parents. Like at Golly River this year, they used their little front porch shed. When parents came in to be trained on the iPad, they met them outside under the roof, those types of things, so they didn't have to bring parents into the building risking contamination or contact.
What would that cost at all the schools, Rocky? I mean, if it's done at all schools?
There's different ways to go at it. You're probably outside classroom. If you pour the pad of cement and then put the metal type covering over it, right now you're probably at about 25 grand at each grade school.
Each?
Yeah.
Is that just like a covered
It's like, well, people hold up the campers maybe.
Shed or something?
There's metal
I
type
think it was
things.
like a picnic.
How much
pavilion.
money do we have here, okay?
We'll get to that at the end.
At the end?
At the end.
Okay. I have to stay awake, huh?
You guys stay away. Rocky, do you want to talk a little bit about the bus garage? Your additional space for the bus garage while you're here?
Oh, sure. At the bus garage, for example, there's never been a place for the drivers to go and get away from the mechanics, get away from the buses, get away from the garage. They're not supposed to be there anyway. And we would like to build a smallish, mid-sized building for them, places they go instead of hanging out in the garage. And get away from each other, because we're not always on top of each other, I guess you should say. And that's another thing that we want to do with the money.
Be about the same as the ones at the schools?
It might be more because that one would probably be built out of wood, and right now wood is more expensive building material than metal. So I don't know, probably a little bit more.
That,
Probably.
and that would be where the bus garage is.
Yeah, right beside it.
Why do you want to use wood instead of metal? I'm sorry.
Yeah, if the wood would be for like 2 or 4 sides, like for the studs,
Yeah.
and then it'll be covered in metal.
It will be enclosed.
It would match the bus garage that, I think it's a bronze kind of metal up there, brown type thing. Yeah, it would match that, but you've got some 2 or 4 studding to go into it, and some insulation in the walls, and some things like that.
We also need an area for recertification and for those drivers to meet and be trained. And that would be a very good facility for them to be close to where they could be trained around their buses and just have a recertification area, a training area.
Well, and they have those online safe schools modules just as every other staff
Right.
person does. And they need to have a place that has adequate internet access to be able to complete them.
Right.
And they don't have that now.
Yeah, they don't have that now.
Well, getting back to the ones at the schools though, would they be enclosed
They're
around the
open.
sun?
No,
They're just open.
Well, why, I mean, in the cold and stuff, how would that work? I mean,
You wouldn't use it
just
in the
because,
cold.
huh?
You wouldn't use it in the cold. It's just an
Wait,
outdoor
wait,
learning
wait,
space.
they're not going to be enclosed
No,
as a
Right
school?
now
I
it's on the
thought
plan.
you meant it was a total prefab building. that's
No.
gonna
no, it'd just be like, what's over, like, just a roof thing.
Just be a roof?
Like a amphitheater. You're just talking about flat pad.
you know how Cherry River had the outside, it didn't even have a roof on it. They had the outside learning area with the little deck built out there that the kids would go out and they would have their outside instruction. So it's something like that, but it would have a roof over it.
Because if you close it, it would be just like a classroom.
Yeah, it's an outdoor learning space.
Fair weather, but go ahead.
It wouldn't be used daily.
No, I'm sure.
No, it wouldn't be used daily.
But it would be to relieve some issues where if you sometime, say, spring, fall, even maybe up into late November, you could go out there with classes and relieve some of the closeness in the building of having kids in every room or something to that effect. Is that what I'm hearing maybe?
Yes.
And it can also be used for adult things, like this year, because we weren't having adults coming into the school, all the parent trainings and things that we typically do as part of our Title I programs were on the back burner. Now, because it was COVID, they kind of have given some allowance for that. But as we move forward, we're still going to be required, like to have that back-to-school night where we talk with the parents about the curriculum and those types of pieces. By having an outdoor space, that would be something we could meet with parents there even while school is going on. You know, they might be having lunch in the cafeteria, but we could meet with parents that way in that space.
It allows for open air.
Open air meeting space.
And thus decreasing the spread of any
Whatever it would be.
potential.
Yeah, whatever we have to deal with. The other piece that they've asked us to look at is technology. We've got Chris back there, but you can see on the bullets, we've purchased the devices in 2020 for our one-to-one initiative, but by the time we get this money and it's getting towards the end, it's going to be time for replacing. Chris, anything that you want to add there? We would be replacing the iPads for students and faculty. And then we were going to add to the distance learning. Right now, we currently have about 4, one for each of the secondary schools, but we need to expand that to include all classrooms along the way.
Yeah, we would like to include increased distance learning, and because if students aren't having to travel back and forth, then they're getting more education during the day. And the more we can eliminate travel time, the more we can increase make their time more efficient at school.
Well, why are we going to use distance learning if they're all going to be in school? I don't understand. If they're all going to be in the classroom,
It's not just if they're not there. Like, for example, right now, we have classes at the secondary level that we have non-certified people for.
yeah.
So there may be the instance, for example, like with Spanish right now. We have 2 Spanish teachers that, bless their heart, they run everywhere trying to meet everybody's needs. If we have proper, like Polycom, real true distance learning equipment in those classrooms, you can have a certified person even if another non-certified person is acting as a facilitator, but that person can deliver specialized content. I think it's going to also hit us with sciences because we're having trouble finding certified higher science people.
The Spanish teachers are moving from school to school. They're not coming to Ridgewood High, are they?
They're at the middle school.
They go to middle school. Okay, the other,
This will work on any place that we don't have a certified person in that field. We will be able to
connect classrooms.
bring in to their teaching by a certified person and supervised by the person over the classroom.
That's my understanding.
Didn't we have that in some places several years ago? Where we, I think for Spanish and some other
Several
places.
years ago, the middle school did the West Virginia Virtual Schools with Spanish, and it kind of works that way.
Yeah.
You have a local facilitator, but the teacher from Charleston
Right,
actually
yeah.
delivered all of the instruction and designed the lessons.
Mhm.
But the facilitator here,
But that
behavior
program-
management,
Yeah,
kept
that
things
program
moving.
has gone
Right.
by the way.
Right, well, because we were able to find a certified Spanish person.
I like that. I hope that gets a bulk of the money here because we need to have certified people.
We have it as the bulk of the money.
We do. And it will also help us too with that high school piece of college and career ready.
Yeah,
Because just like now where we're partnering with Glenville, some of those teachers, they're teaching the course online, but that would make that a whole lot easier for those kids to be able to do it there in a group setting than individually on their own.
great.
I'm going to let Donna talk a little bit about CTE.
Dr. Teacher, before you go on, I don't think that, in my opinion, this is just me speaking, that this online instruction is going to go away anytime soon. I mean, we say we're going to have kids in school next year. We'd love to have 100% of them in school, but I don't think that's going to go away for a while, is it?
Well, basically what I understand is it's going to be a thing that that we're going to have to get used to. I think the quarantining, from my understanding, will probably cease to exist, and it will be just another one of those viruses we have to learn to live with. And that means that we may continue to have spikes and high absenteeism. There may be situations that we have, just like the flu. I mean, I know that a couple of years ago before COVID hit, I had a high percentage of students that were out because of the flu. And the health department had asked me not to close. And across the state, we had an outbreak of the flu. And there was only one county in the state that closed against what the health department advised. So, I think that's where we're headed, to be quite honest with you. But I do think that the distance learning, if there's another pandemic, if this rolls out into another strain that keeps us from home. I mean, no one knows what the future holds, but as long as if we're prepared and that we can get certified teachers into every student's classroom by having the capability through technology is definitely the right way to go. And that's kind of been, that was my focus on this plan, is to be prepared for types of things like that.
Well-
And it's not every day that you get money from the government to do these things, so.
We use that for weather-related situations when we call school off.
Remote.
And we also use that same process.
Distance learning?
Yeah.
I believe you could, but one of our challenges with that is limited access for students with the internet. And that's one of our biggest challenges, is having equal access for students. Now, is it possible that we can load things on the iPads? It's possible that we can pre-record things. I think that this year we were forced, not that Nicholas County had to be forced, again, I think that we've been ahead of the curve because we started, thankfully, we started with 3rd, 6th, and 9th grade. This board saw fit to buy the iPads prior to this pandemic. Again, we were ahead of the game. We had already started rolling in that direction. We already had contracts, people were being trained, and then we were able to use CARES money to purchase the rest of the iPads for the students. But, I think that as we evolve, we will get better, and we'll have better delivery methods for our kids. But
Some years we missed 15 or 20 days, what we call snow days. And that's a pretty big bite out.
it does, and we've been able to do remote learning days, which has been a way that students can do types of work at home so that we don't have to make up the days. There's definitely positives and negatives to that. I just don't think you can beat having, in-person instruction, and you can't introduce new things on remote learning days, for sure. But I'm hopeful that we will continue to improve the more we learn. Does that answer? So I want to talk to you about the needs assessment for CTE and completers. So in 2019 to 2020, we had 196 students enrolled, and in 2019, we only had 59 students complete programs. To complete a career technical education program, you have to complete 4 courses in a prescribed area. And so 2020-21, we had 226 students enrolled, and we had 65 completers. And one of the reasons we had such an increase, and Tom Bayless is here, he can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but they implemented a wonderful program for 9th graders, which was an exploratory program that got students into the facility and provided exposure for opportunities so that our students were made aware of the career technical ed opportunities. And I also worked with the high schools to ensure that students had the ability through scheduling to go to the Career Center, and that had been a barrier for quite some time. But in my opinion, it is no longer a barrier, or definitely not to the extent that it used to be. And in 21-22, we're projecting 333 students to be enrolled, with a total of 125 students as being completers. That's what we have projected. So it has been really, really increasing. And the passage rate for drug tests, that's also a big thing, as you know, in our community and across our state, across the United States, and even the world. The drug epidemic is terrible, and sadly it's not getting the attention I think it needs, because everyone's had to be focused on the pandemic at hand. So, but one of the things that we're doing, and West Virginia is doing, and I'll have to give big kudos to the state of West Virginia, Kathy D'Antoni, when she implemented the drug testing for career technical education students. So our students, as you can see, in 2019-2020, we had a 95% passage rate of the drug test. 2021, we had 98% passage rate. So we're doing really well with our students, and of course the students who do not pass, they're provided with services and counseling and different things like that.
Dr. Teakin, just as a form of educating all of us, what's the difference between a completer and someone who leaves with certification?
Okay, so you can actually complete a program without earning a single certification. And that is, that's a terrible thing that happens. Because the certification shows that a student is able to meet a business or industry type credential that a business says they want students to know and be able to do certain tasks. So the certification is almost like your teaching license. You get that, it says, okay, you fulfilled all the requirements and you can do all these things and we're going to give you a license. So it's the same thing with career technical education. You can technically complete the 4 courses and walk out with any type of certification. That's something I don't want to ever happen to our kids. My goal is that we increase as many certifications as we can, and I'll have to say that Tracy Chenoweth is working with Tom Bayless, and they are working to create more local partnerships, local certifications that will tie into state and national certifications. So, and it's also possible to earn certifications without being a completer. So you could actually go in and earn a welding certification because you have you've been able to show the skills for the different types of welding positions and the welding on the different thicknesses of plate, and you could actually earn a certification without being a completer. But the goal is to get students to complete the 4 courses to help depth their knowledge base and to earn credentials to make them employable and college ready.
Are students required to take vocational courses?
They are not required to take them at the Career Center. There is a personalized education plan that students take. So that means that they have to identify what track they're going their 8th grade year. They have to just identify, hey, I want to go be a doctor. And being a doctor may mean that they just beef up on their biology, chemistry, physics classes. Or it may mean that they want to go to the Career Center and take a health occupations program. So there's different things. I mean, there's a variety of meanings to that.
So they don't have to go to the Career Center?
They do not have to. We have, no, because as you can see, in 2019-20, we definitely have more high school students than 196. There was only 196 students who went to the Career Center out of all of our high schools, so 600, 800, 700, 800 kids, we had 196.
Was there not a program that required them to go and
It is not,
be introduced to the different
no,
things?
it's not required. The 9th grade exploratory program was developed to introduce students to it. It has never been a requirement for them to attend, but what the principals do is they enroll students in this 9th grade exploratory program, and if the student's parents or the student does not want to participate, all they have to do is advise the principal that they do not want to participate and they're removed from the program.
Thank you.
Just one thing to that, I think for me personally, is I would look at the college going rate of our county. We have to move beyond just graduating kids from high school and then 30% of those go to college. We want to make sure that when those kids leave high school, the other 70% are ready to go into some type of work, I would think. Is that correct with Vocational Center? I mean, you guys back there, you all are working toward that we have every kid prepared to go to work, at least, or most of them anyway, when they leave our high schools. And so, I mean, that's our goal.
And it's a lack of exposure. So I know over the years when I started talking to individuals, I talked to students, I talked to parents, and individuals did not know what was available to them. And so once the students go up, and those who think they know, they sometimes think of the old VOTEC, which it's evolved from the old VOTEC. It is a career technical education, it's advanced skills, it's college level reading material. So it's no longer the old VOTEC. And a lot of parents may look at that and say, oh, we don't want you going up there because you are college material, you're advanced, without knowing that, no, these are far more advanced. And I will tell you, sitting in the back is our teacher who teaches Project Lead the Way. It's a pre-engineering program. And she, in my opinion, is, and I doubt anyone would debate it, probably one of our strongest teachers in the county. and she teaches at the Career Center, pre-engineering. But without the exposure and the students going up there, people are not going to know, and they're going to think of the old VOTEC. So it's critical that those kids get up there and see, and the parents get to see what's available to them.
Well, that new program that we started, the associate degree.
It also runs through the Career Center. So again, that's a great point, Mr. Berry. And again, I'm proud to say, the other teacher is not here, but we had the highest number of individuals graduate from an associate's degree in high school as anybody in the state of West Virginia. And I had superintendents asking me, how did we do it? So I'm going to be meeting with some on Monday, and we're going to be giving them our plan. And the plan was worked out very strategically with the previous president of Glenville State College. Our plan is a little different than the other plans across the state, but it was because we worked together, we negotiated, and we knew what it would take to get those kids across the line, and didn't take no for an answer, and we got 9 students to graduate.
Well, another thing too was, the board voted to help out the expenses, so there was no expense to the parents. And I'm sure that pushed some of the parents to say, yeah, we want you to do that.
This board paid for the books, it took on the expenses, so we had those 9 kids graduated debt-free.
And what I was saying a moment ago, the more, this is the completers and certification. When our kids are leaving our high schools, they're better prepared for the workforce out there by those 2 programs. And we would expect an even larger number to increase, that number to increase with students participating in this program.
My goal is to see every student have the opportunity to complete a program in 2 years. And in that 2 years, they have stackable credentials. Then the latter 2 years of their high school, they can complete in another area with additional stackable credentials. And the areas may not even be related. It may be in power sports equipment, and it may be in pre-engineering. They can complete in 2 areas with stackable credentials. Or a person may decide that they want to go into the pre-engineering program and actually stay all 4 years in that program, earn their stackable credentials and an associate's degree. And that's where I think we have to, we're headed that way in Nicholas County, and that's where I think we need to be.
I think we are thinking of the future. I appreciate that.
Are you still having the 8th graders go over?
That is once a month. The plan is being developed. So now, in the past, we had 8th graders go over, I think, once a year. But now they're going to, the plan is that 8th graders will go over as part of their class 1 day a month to be exposed to career technical education. So if we do that 1 day a month, get some exposure, get them excited, because guys, one of the things that we don't see happen very often is people getting excited about things. If you're not excited about life and you're not excited about what you're doing, well, just think about the depression that our kids face, and they don't have any ideas what they're going to do with their life. But boy, if you expose someone to something that they enjoy doing, that excitement, it gives you a new purpose. And we've got to get our kids excited and keep them excited. And that's what I'm hoping that we're doing with career technical education.
Do they still have the option of not going for that 1 day a month?
In 8th grade, no. That's going to be part of their class. And that will be 8th graders going.
What would be the class that would be associated with that?
Mr. Bayless, do you have that? They don't have the details, so I actually have both middle school principals working with Mr. Bayless, and they've tossed around different ideas. So it would just be a matter of one of their classes, instead of sitting in class that particular day, they would be going over and getting some hands-on experience and getting the exposure.
They're all day, once a month, all day?
No, it wouldn't be all day.
Okay.
No, it would just be that they would have exposure once a month. And I'm not sure how long that would be. I'm letting them work out the details.
Would they be able to choose which category they wanted to experience?
We're probably going to set it up more as a round robin type of experience.
So all those eighth graders get to see every program and study we can offer in our county.
Okay. In the pre-engineering, can they get all 4 courses that they need for the program, for the
Oh, yes.
certification?
They actually can get 5 courses right now, and possibly 6, depends on when they start.
Do what?
Great, go ahead.
I really appreciate what is taking place at the Career Center. You guys are, you're focused on it, and it's about every kid leaving here ready to do something when they get out of high school. You think about, in years past, we graduate kids, well, they're all going to college, and the rest of them said, when they graduate from 12th grade, now what am I going to do? You know, we're getting them prepared before they leave and focused to some degree on a career of some kind, and I really appreciate what's going on.
They're doing a great job. I mean, I really have to commend them.
Oh, I think so too. It's just, I needed some clarification.
Okay, next.
All right. I want to talk to you about the power of CTE and about the transformation that is underway with regards to the high school curriculum and the focus on career and technical ed. But in order to do that, I want to, let's see if I can get this to work. Yes. Anytime we're looking at a topic this large and this detailed and this important, we want to have some research that backs our decision. Okay? So I've pulled some studies, and I won't bore you with all of the details or read it slide by slide, but I did pick out some things that I do want us to look at. The first study that I'm going to have you look at is a 2019 study. I know we're in 2021 and we've been through COVID, so as far as a recent study goes, this is a pretty recent one, being 2019. This is the Connecticut study, and it is a study of 16 high schools under the Connecticut Technical High School Systems as their version of career technical ed, and I want you to notice what the results of that study did. It showed at the end that they had better 9th grade attendance rates. They increased by 14%, better test scores for the 10th graders on the evaluation that they did, and they increased their graduation rates by 10% overall. And in addition to that, it showed they tracked these folks later on, and by age 23, they were able to record that these students had a 30% greater income capacity as a result. So meaning they came out of a career technical center, their version of their centers, and were able to earn 30% more as an adult, which is fantastic. That means in their career, they were excelling. Another study that I wanted you to see, because I can't just focus on one, I wanted to talk...
On that study.
Yes, sir.
Better 10th grade test scores, 0.2 standard deviation. Is that standard deviation from the mean of the
Yes,
grade test
yes,
score?
from their mean, yes, sir, yes.
Okay. Just 0.2. Okay.
Just 0.2 by their test scores. That was one class grade, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Now, I want to talk to you about another study. Now, this was done in 2020. This was California. And you know, California tends to be on the cutting edge. Starts on the west and comes over to the east. But California, this is their Department of Education study. And they highlight 3 areas. We're going to talk about each one briefly. Pupil achievement. We're going to also talk here in a slide about pupil engagement. And then we'll end with school climate. But let's take a look at what the California Department of Education came up with. I want to look at some of these, and I highlighted a few for you. But they have in place in California an academy program very similar to what we're moving to. And they call theirs the California Partnership Academies. Well, I want you to take a look, and I highlighted here in the green some of the really ones that stand out. Attendance, which has been a problem that we've discussed, and Dr. Lee and Dr. Tetrick have expanded on some of the issues that we're facing. Attendance is one of them. Attendance more than doubled as students were part of a CTE program. Their national graduation rates went from, for CTE was 90% as compared to 75% who were not in a CTE program. Okay? And you can read some of the other bullets, but I've highlighted, I want you to notice this. Seniors graduate on time, 95%, which is 10% more than the state average. So that's collectively out of the whole state, out of this study that they did. And then I want you to notice here, 57% of the students met their end-of-course requirements, much greater than the students who didn't participate. So the numbers are significant when you're looking at the data. Now that's under pupil achievement, so that's student achievement. Let's take a look at engagement, because engagement is also a big issue. If you'll look here, under engagement, in a CTE program, I want you to notice CTE increases the engagement by involving the students, makes them part of the decision-making process, and there's nothing that has increased that even greater than the simulated workplace that has been established in the state a number of years ago. Simulated workplace does give students ownership of not only their education, but the jobs and the tasks and the certifications that they're able to earn while in that CTE program. Students in this academy are able to match or mesh their academics along with their CTE, so it provides a stronger and more relevance. So you'll notice here, students taking both academics and technical courses had a lower dropout rate as a result. In addition, the risk for dropouts decreased, so our dropout rate, or their dropout rate, for students in a CTE program, I want you to notice, high-risk students are 8 to 10 times less likely to drop out as a part of the CTE program. These are the students that are in that. And then, of course, the National Dropout Prevention Center says that it's essential for all students to be part of a CTE program. So we're getting some national acclaim, we're getting some recognition on these state-type studies, and I'll continue here with school climate. I think this is one that really hits us, especially now after this post-COVID, in this connectedness, in this needing to be connected. Dr. Lee spoke to the social, the well-being, the mental health. A lot of times that happens because students don't feel connected to anything. And this study specifically singled out that in the fact that there were less behavioral problems, more connectedness, more willingness and ambition to get in there and learn simply because they were a part of a CTE program. Now, the Nicholas County Career Academy model does that and more. We are putting small learning communities together that will focus, as Dr. Tetrick talked just a little bit ago about, on a specific career concentration with the academics, and I do mean rigorous academics, surrounding them. It will take collaboration between the academic teachers and the CTE instructors, but what it will do is it will support and only enhance the relevance and the rigor. Students in the CTE programs have the availability to be a part of the CTSO, which is your student organizations. That's your FBLA, that's your FFA, you've heard of those. We have those DECA and on and on. They're able to participate and have leadership opportunities within those CTSOs. Leadership opportunities that they might not get if they weren't a part of that organization. Stackable certifications, that was just talked about a little bit ago. Stackable certifications that allow students to master skill sets before moving to the next skill set level. And it builds confidence each time that they do that. Each time that they do that, they're certifying and they're saying to themselves and to business and industry, I am capable of performing those skill sets and I am able and ready to go to work in that area. Dual credit courses, we were also just talking about that as well. And hooray to the 9 who graduated with an associate's degree. But even beyond that, our work with Glenville State College in our 2+2 programs, talking a little bit ago about the distance learning and needing the equipment, that's only going to enhance that. Allowing us to provide 2 years and a straight pathway into Glenville State College to finish out their degree program. Even have those folks on our campus, distance-wise or physically. Just the options are just incredible. And then, of course, embedded credit. where students can earn their academic embedded credit while they're taking their CTE courses. It allows them the opportunity to take more CTE courses, and as Mr. Bayless talked a little bit ago, he had indicated that students could take or stay in a program and maybe get that 5th or 6th course. That allows them to do that. They essentially become masters of their concentration by the time that they're done, because they're able to spend more time there.
Mrs. Chairman,
Yes,
just quickly, we saw these students graduate with the associate's degree this past year, and our focus was, I think, 2 areas, maybe business and education. Is that correct?
yes.
Are we hoping to maybe work on expanding that if possible to other
Absolutely.
areas?
Yes.
I mean, is part of the CTE program?
Absolutely, absolutely. Dr. Tetrick's goal, and she has expressed that to me, is that we have opportunities in all areas. Yes, along with the stackable credentials that work towards this, because a lot of times just building those stackable credentials will lead a student to wiping out some of those undergrad type credits that they need.
And Dr. Manchin is committed to implementing associate's degrees for each program. We've talked at length, and we're actually working on that.
Good, thank you.
And we have Kim here, which is great. Kim McPherson is here, and we were talking a little bit about STEM and her Project Lead the Way. Well, CTE is STEM. It's STEM every way, shape, or form. So if you look at STEM programs, 50% of all STEM jobs are open to workers with less than a bachelor's degree. Pretty impactful. 30% of today's STEM initiative jobs or intensive jobs are in the blue-collar fields. I'll continue on and explain to you that why CTE is STEM, in the fact that it is science, it is technology, it is engineering, and it is mathematics. And you can look at the percentages. Just for example, let's take science. 61% of all CTE students interested in a science career report that their CTE courses equip them with the skills necessary to go on. And you can look, mathematics was another one. 45% of students interested in a math career reported that their CTE courses helped them attain higher math skills. So again, it goes back to the idea that Dr. Penix, you were saying, the student comes out with a set of skills. Academics, of course, yes, but a set of skills that can also take them further based on where they want to be, on their choice, their career path. Now, I've provided you, as you can see, additional data. It's always good to have more than 1 or 2 studies. There's all kinds of studies dating back, and I have given you the dates and the names of those studies as we go through, so that if you wanted to delve into that and take a look specifically at what that study reported, you could do that. But in highlighting it, it just reiterates my point. Again, another study, High Schools at Work. This is SREB, very nationally renowned. And you can see the data that they've combined. Combining CTE courses prepares the students for success, and 80% of students who take a rigorous CTE course, along with their core courses, prepare them for college and career. And that's what we're looking at. We're no longer looking at college or career. The or is gone. It's and. College and career ready. That or is gone. You know, years ago it used to be or. There's no or. There's no or. Why would there be an or? It's and. College and career ready. Another study that I did, and working backwards, because it's important to look at where we've come. This one goes back to 2017. And we're looking at some of those non-cognitive skills. So we've talked about academics and how important academics are. We've talked about the stackable credentials within CTE. But there's some non-cognitive skills that are developed as well, like leadership opportunities, knowing how to talk to people, knowing how to manage a meeting, knowing how to do different things. And if you want to, you could call them the more everyday applicable things, but they're still skills nonetheless that some students are missing in today's day and age.
Yeah, I think the notion that CTE is not a part of education has been present in the past, you know, but now I think we're putting them as one. And that's good.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because currently, I don't know that you knew it, but the new administration, the new Biden administration, named a new educational secretary, United States educational secretary. His name is Miguel Cardona. And he is the gentleman who is in charge of United States education. And he is a CTE completer. And you're probably not guess which field, but it was in automotive technology. Wow. And he was in Connecticut years ago, came out of the school system that first study was about. But he went to CTE, wanted to be a mechanic, completed an automotive technology program, then later on decided he was going to get a career in education, and so where we are today. He says in a letter that he sent out to all United States parents and students that CTE is what is next, and he believes it, and he knows it as a product of CTE himself. He knows it, and he knows the potential.
I don't mean to interrupt, and I don't want to extend our time. I know our time is short here. But I do want to point out a couple of things. I like the way you're speaking of college and career ready. It's no longer for. I like that. And then also, I'm sure you're going to talk about this sometime in the near future, but thinking about like this area of CTE and the core classrooms around that, focusing on, for example, if you're in entrepreneurship, your writing is going to be, through the English program, is going to be, I would assume, focused on, entrepreneurship and those types of things. And so the various other subjects are tying into that specific area. I mean, I'm sure that that's what you're...
Especially like math.
Yeah, that's what you're going to think in the future. I want to add one other thing to this. My son, who has an MBA, and he's well educated, costs me a lot of money, but anyway, he is well educated. He is he's in the middle of life, and suddenly he's faced with he has to regroup. And you know what he's doing? His plans are in the near future. He's going back to get certification in HVAC, electrical work, and welding, so that he can move one further in other areas that he's already had some experience in. But the value of CTE is extremely important to our children today. And I just appreciate the focus that you're bringing to this with our Nicholas County schools. So it is important. It's important.
Yes, sir.
Sorry.
Not at all. And it is important for you to see the studies and know what the data is saying. It's not just something that West Virginia can report. It's not just something that Nicholas County can report. It is something that we can look at nationwide and see that the things that we're moving to is validated by the things that other people have tried and the results that they're getting from it. So I wanted you to see those studies. That's why I went in depth there. I apologize if it's long, but it's important that you see it. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, in our plan description, of course, that was the first item. Second item is the high-quality professional development. Because if we are going to change our mindset and our way of operation, we're going to have to invest in our people. And professional development is going to be a huge piece of our funding that's working towards this CTE mindset. But we are not going to totally abandon what we've been doing. We know that over the last few years, our professional development, we have really focused a lot on John Hattie's instructional strategies and are kids engaged and how are they engaged. We also know that we have been using a lot of Weston Kieschnick's work on using tech tools appropriately and enhancing this, not replacing it. But we're just going to keep right on moving into CTE and how we can do that teaching like you're talking about, wrapping those academics around how it would look in our career options. Another one of our pieces, and this is one of the required pieces when we became eligible for this money, there are certain amounts that you have to use on certain things, and one of those is extended day and summer programming. And I'm not going to belabor that too long, but as you already know, we currently have partnerships with several organizations that provide some extended day and summer programming, such as the Save the Children. I believe they came to a board meeting here a few months back and met with you guys and explained some of their services. That's also in partnership with the 21st Century Community Learning Centers through the state of West Virginia. We currently, this summer, have a partnership with WVU Extension with their Energy Express options. And of course, with our funding, we would like to be able to provide some additional academic tutoring throughout the school year and during the summer to help our kiddos as we see all these deficits that they have as we're coming.
Dr. Lee, very quickly, I'd ask in the future that you come to the board and just go over all those programs with us in more detail.
I certainly will. At the end of the summer, it would be great because we're also having a summer soul provided from round 2 funds. And we've had 1 week and I'm hearing stellar results.
Good.
Okay, technology and distance learning. Donna, you want to talk about this or you want me to? I think we've kind of already
We've already covered, I mean, if you want to, I'll just say that again, we started out with the one-to-one devices and we purchased for 3rd, 6th, and 9th. And thankfully, we were able to use some CARES money to purchase the rest of the devices we needed. So for a refresher, this money has to be spent within 3 years. If we can spend $1.5 million to refresh, buy new devices again, which will be a big savings to this board. And the purchase of distance learning equipment to offer high-quality instruction to all students. Again, that's what I spoke to Mr. Moose was asking questions about, that we need to get that technology into the classroom so that we are capable of providing, distance learning services. Chris, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, this will actually should go really well with our new schools. Hopefully, they'll be getting new devices at the same time as going into a new building, and it'll be a really good fresh start for our kids.
Chris, did we not, when we bought the 3rd, 6th, and 9th grade, did we not buy a package with that where we could obtain new devices for,
So they came with
where we could replace those after so many years?
There's buyback programs, so, and there's not a set amount for that. Apple doesn't do it, third parties do it. What we purchased when we purchased the devices was warranties and training is what we've purchased with them. So, yeah, they are all covered. The only way that we lose money on them now is if they lose them. So, but if they break, then we can all get them replaced.
But our kids have been doing really well with it.
Yeah, we did
Very
not
well.
have a whole lot of breakages at all.
Nope.
Kids have done really well.
Yep, our kids have done great. So.
I like that shower, Rocky.
That's kind of the idea.
Yeah.
He already ran out. But open air space.
And again, we spoke, let's see, well,
What if the school already has it? Sarah Berkshire already has one.
what's,
Need another one?
And that may be a discussion
That we
Rocky
have.
has with the
Yeah.
principal to see, and is it adequate? Does it need refurbished? No matter how long it's been there. If it's getting in disrepair,
They got mixing cables under it.
yeah, you may be able to do some
Do
improvements
enhancement
rather
or
than start
something.
over.
One thing about this, are colleges modifying their programs in line with this, or are we sending our students into what we experienced? I mean, it wasn't easy, and it wasn't, if they don't vary their program in line with our program, then we're dumping our kids out into.
no, I can answer that. We are following the content standards and objectives established by the state. We're not asking for a waiver, we're not changing them, we are following the content standards and objectives. But what we are doing is, what I'm trying to do is to bring relevance to that. So if you have a student who is in a math class, or in science class, how many times do you ever have a kid say, well, where am I ever going to use this? I mean, seriously, how
I've
many?
said it myself.
Okay. But but in a science class, if you're in a cosmetology program, then that science teacher is going to be able to say, well, these are some examples of how science is important for this. So it's going to be bringing relevance. So what I'm introducing is not dumbing down, it's not changing, all it's doing is enhancing and bringing relevance to the student's learning. Yeah, it's not changing it. Not asking for a waiver would not do that. I think that would be irresponsible. We're sticking with what the state has approved, we're just enhancing.
And I think of the fact that the student knows that what they are learning is actually, they're gonna be using it in the job that they're gonna try to get into, is gonna, they know they have to do it. It's not like, we have to take a class and we're like,
Well,
we're not gonna use that. They will be using,
Yeah, you're exactly right. I met your grandson. Your grandson was excited, showed me his artwork. I mean, he was 100% excited about what he was doing with career technical education. And that's what you find when you go up and you get in with career technical ed. We snagged one of the best. We've got several of what I consider one of the best, not only in our county, but in the state, our teachers. Miss McPherson is, and if you know her, she is one of the best.
I don't know.
Well,
She was my student teacher.
well, then, so ask her for a testimonial.
I know she's
She
absolutely
got hooked.
outstanding.
We snagged her, she got it, but often, it's too often that our academic teachers, our career technical education directors who didn't have previous exposure to CTE had no idea what was available. But once they get that exposure, they're hooked. And that's the way it is with kids. You true?
That's, to
So
me,
that's
that's
what
one of the big benefits of CTE is generating interest. People come to school, they're interested in what they do, and when they're interested in one part, they get involved in other parts.
The leadership, the belonging, I always gave an example. I worked at the Department of Education when simulated workplace was being developed and talking about the uniforms. And I always said, do you feel a certain way when you're wearing sweatpants and you're lounging around the house? Do you feel a certain way versus when you put on your suit? You feel differently. So that's what we're doing to our kids. When you've got a kid in a pair of sweatpants and you put a football jersey on them, or they identify. Our kids long to identify and be accepted and find that connectedness. So that's what we've done with simulated workplace. We've helped them develop a positive identity and leadership skills. So again, I'm really glad you asked that question, Mr. Moose, because I think it's important that everyone understands we're not changing conduct standards and objectives. We're only enhancing.
Well, and also, over the years, I noticed every student needs to belong to something. You can't put them all in athletics, you can't put them all in band. Some of them, there's other areas they need to go in.
One of the most powerful things I saw down in Logan County was a group of students in the first robotics program in the state of West Virginia. And these kids were not athletes. They were not kids that belonged to anything. And it was a group of kids that came together collectively because there was a really, really compassionate teacher who knew she had to do something to reach these kids. And she brought them in and started doing robotics with them. And she created the first robotics program in the state. And to see the joy and excitement of those kids, they excelled. They went to competitions, and they became the stars. They became the heroes in that school. And just to see the transformation of those kids from when that program started to how it ended up in a few years was phenomenal. And to see that type of excitement in our kids excites me. And I think will excite and touch any single person that is ever around, and if you give it a chance.
I just want to tell Tracy Chenoweth something. When we went up there to that nursing home groundbreaking, and we went and you explained the CTE, especially the nursing program, and some of the things that we could do through the CTE programs for that nursing home. I'm telling you, you knocked it out of the park. That was great, and I mean, I would like if you could present that to the board like you did up there that day. I mean, it was really, and you could see on their faces, they were blown away by the way you put that out there, that what CTE could do for them as well as the community, the students. I just thought it was great.
She's actually planning to do that.
All right.
She's going to be presenting this to the board.
Yeah.
So, does that help explain where we're going from and to connect, to help these kids.
Amen. Keep going.
All right. So, the plan for facilities, again, this is something Dr. Lee mentioned earlier when we talked about the needs. And the UV sanitation lights, we can't ignore that COVID's here and that we have other viruses. And we need to try to keep our kids healthy. So we know that there's these new advancements to help clean the air, to help protect our kids. So we think that it's important to invest in improving the cleanliness by adding the UV sanitizing lights, floor machines, cleanliness, again. Just things that we need to do to keep our schools clean. The air filters, because we have to change those filters every so often, every 3 months, or I can't remember, but so it's to help with the purchasing of the filters, hood cleanings in the kitchens, auditorium seats, and carpeting at Nicholas County High School is very, very worn. That's the only school that I have that's singled out. And then, of course, I have Board of Education and the Nicholas County Learning Center, things that are going to happen, which is some roof replacements. So that's something we thought would be worth throwing in and trying to secure the money for. And then, of course, cleaning supplies and the outdoor meeting space to allow for social distancing.
One of the pieces that we have to do for the application is to make sure that there is a connection to the strategic plan, which you guys are aware of. Our number one goal with our strategic plan is to increase that achievement in reading and math. And of course, everything that we have looked at so far will impact climate, culture, and resulting in higher quality teaching and instruction. So we just had to make sure that that was in there. We also have to address sustainability, which is when this funding goes away in 3 years, how do we maintain? And these are the ways that we will make sure that what we've spent our money on continues. We're going to be looking at our TISA's coordinators and directors to follow up on that professional development that teachers are receiving. We'll be able to do that through using our federal funding and our Perkins funding. And then we'll also have levy maintenance funds that we'll be able to use to pick back up on providing the filters and the cleaning and the routine maintenance.
Would some of our levy funds be also technology, be also
Yes,
applicable
for
there?
the sustained
What
part.
needs to be stated?
For sustained.
And then the last one is just a budget outline, which is kind of the big ideas of where the money will go. We're eligible for, it's approximately $11 million. However, they tell us how you have to spend just under $4 million of it. And those areas that are required are these top three. You have to have certain pieces that will address learning loss, after school, and summer enrichment opportunities. So those are your must-haves. Then we can determine some of the additional areas that we've kind of already gone over. And of course, you always have indirect costs on a federal grant, which is basically the money that you are receiving to administer the grant. But you'll see we have, I know somebody was asking about technology, we have $4 million of this in technology right off.
So 743,000 healthy schools, would that be where the like sheds would come in under that part of it?
Let me pull my paper here and I can tell you exactly, but yes, healthy schools also includes the roof replacement, the auditorium seating, the floor machines, the filters, the hood cleanings, bus facility, and outdoor meeting areas. And the UV
Why are there
sanitizing
no
lots.
outdoor meeting places
It's
for
in
the secondary schools?
It's
It
in
says all elementary.
Yes, all elementary is the priority at this time. During the round 2 money, and I think Rocky's already gone, but he worked on getting, I don't know if you've been down to Nicholas County High School, right between Nicholas County High School and Summersville Middle. They put out some picnic tables so they kind of have that social green space. And I'm not sure what he's been working on with Richwood High School with the move at this point.
Go put Wi-Fi in those shoulders.
No, Wi-Fi I would think would be accessible on
Good
anywhere on the
building.
school.
Yeah,
on the
anywhere
school
around,
grounds.
you can
Okay,
access
you
it.
wouldn't need it.
It's, I mean, it's already accessible there.
Other questions from the superintendent or Dr. Lee or Mrs. Chenoweth in regard to this plan? Now, Madam Superintendent, it's my understanding that, and now I may have this wrong, but, and I want to thank you for having us come in today because you wanted to share with us before you presented to the state board on Monday this plan. And the state's kind of got it out of order. They're saying, come to us with your plan, and then you put it out on public comment, and then we'll vote on this at a later date. We'll vote, am I correct on that, or do we vote on it?
You are correct, and I know that many of the superintendents are going to and have gone to the state board without presenting to their board, but as you know, I do like to present things to my board so that you all know exactly where we're coming from, our thoughts, you know, our thoughts, feelings, let you see where we are, and then I'll be presenting to the state board, and then of course it will go out for a public comment period, and then at that time, you know, hopefully be accepted. Now, I have no idea if the state board will accept all or a portion or how much they will accept of what we're proposing. There's a possibility we may have to go back and rework part of it. And from my understanding, that is, that's common. That's what's been happening, is that it's not 100% accepted, and that's okay. We have alternative plans and ideas of how we would move forward in you know, spending the money a different way. But again, you are right, Dr. Penix, I didn't feel right going to the state and presenting this plan without presenting it to my board.
I thank you for doing that.
That's coming up right away, isn't it? Your
Monday.
presentation?
Monday.
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 That's what I was thinking.
Well, I do thank you for coming to the board, and sharing this with us prior to doing that. Thank you.
That 4 million ed tech, that's distance learning, that's what we're talking about there?
Yes, and
Okay.
Good presentation. Yes. If there are no further questions for the superintendent, we do have a board meeting on Tuesday evening at 5 o'clock, which is a regularly scheduled meeting. And then we have the work session the next day on the 30th with architects, Skanska, everybody else and his brother. They'll be here at 9 o'clock on the 30th, and that can go anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. So just be planning on a work session at that time. We will probably, I don't know if Kevin has cleanup finances to do on that day, but if he does, it'll be on the agenda. So, but those are our next meetings, and then after that, July the 6th is our first meeting of the next fiscal year. So, any questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn this afternoon's meeting? Mr. Amick moves. Is there a second to the motion? Second. Mrs. Kaufman silently or quietly giving a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Madam Secretary. Please, Madam Secretary.
Time to get back on.
Madam Secretary, 3:35.